Welcome back to the main stage at Event Tech Live, USA Canada 21, and on to our next session, Back to the Future, perhaps. And we welcome Director of Technology at Grenadine Technologies, Mr. Henry Baylan joins us now. Henry, welcome along to Event Tech Live.
Thank you, James.
So it's great to have you here. I can't quite hear you at the moment, Henry, so I'm just going to hand over to you to introduce your panel of speakers, and I'll be back with you a little bit later on with some questions from our audience. Over to you, Henry.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to Back to the Future. I'm from Grenadine Technologies, and as everyone has experienced in the last year, we've all had to pivot to virtual events. With me are three event professionals that have worked with our technology and other technologies in producing events from previous years and the past year and going virtual. I have Marie-France Watson from Concordia University, Audra Peck from Assist-M, and Brian Yannish from Marketing Hits. They've all produced various sizes of events in the last year, and I'll let them introduce themselves and have a brief explanation of some of the things they've done. I'll start with Audrey, and then Marie-France, and then Brian. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Henry, and thank you for letting me join your panel today. My name's Audra Peck, and I'm the CEO and founder for System Educational Consulting based out of Colorado in the U.S. And my background kind of is a little smattering of education, well, about 20 years of it. I was a STEM instructor first, and then moved into school administration and began opening specialized schools. And in 2012, we opened a system consulting to help advise schools design and kind of improve their student achievement. So the past few years, we started branching out into servicing teachers' conferences to help teachers gain all the knowledge that they needed and wanted. And the last client we had was Space Center Houston's 27th Annual Space Exploration Education Conference, which is the one we'll mostly refer to as we did partner with Grenadine for that.
Thank you. So, Marie-France?
Yeah, hi, my name is Marie-France Watson, based in Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I've been working in academic and international conferences for over 12 years now, and at Concordia for the last 10. We've been doing a lot of major conferences, bringing in conferences from all over the world and hosting it at Concordia University in person. And I was fortunate enough to be using the Grenadine software prior to that for these major conferences for the in-person version and taking advantage of all the offerings of that. So when this last year, when we flipped to virtual, luckily we were very fortunate to have Grenadine as a base and as a tool that we could help transform together into this virtual service offering, which we actually now call internally amongst our community kind of our virtual conference center. So it's been a really great transformation. We've done many events. We are in the middle of our massive conference season right now with having completed, I think, 4 out of the 6 major conferences, which are international gatherings. And we have been hearing what a lot of people have been hearing, which is that it's more accessible. Researchers from all over the world are able to connect, and we've almost consistently doubled our attendance for all these international conferences where perhaps they were limited due to funding or to travel or other commitments, physical commitments that they couldn't make it. Now we're seeing a whole revolution of what's happening in the academic sector for international conferences.
Thank you, Marie-France. Okay, Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian Yannish. Thanks for inviting me, Henry. I've worked in the digital space for over 20 years. I accidentally got into the event space by a recommendation from
Welcome back, everybody, to Event Tech Live.
Help another client with their event that was coming to my city. So we work with event planners around the world and help them on the digital side of things. From in-person, we do the check-in management with facial recognition. We've got kiosks that print name badges on demand, to the virtual side of things now, where we do the full production for the events. Working small events like the one I have tomorrow, where we're doing a production for 100 people, to large major events, 2-day event we did this spring with 400 virtual sessions, 300 plus speakers, and 13,000 attendees. So new challenges, but that's always been in the digital space, and I really enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that everyone's had to do in the last year is basically pivot and change and go online. So what actually changed for yourselves when you did that? And in terms of, can you give a brief idea to everyone of what your experience is for your particular events? Okay, we'll start in the same order again. Audrey?
Very good. Well, thanks. Yeah, I think, our brief description is really quick and right to it. When we were asked to do this most recent event, again, which is the one I'll refer to the most today, it was our very first COVID attempt. And I think that when you think about an educators conference, often people will kind of shrug their heads because it's teachers and we're kind of a little bit of a tribe, so to speak. And so it was really going to be a tricky transition from the in-person conference, which had 26 successful years, to then all of a sudden having to go completely virtual with this team and a staff that had never done any virtual presentations or a conference. So I think they really were concerned about making sure that they could maintain the integrity of the conference that they had kind of built. With NASA's backing, we have some formalities we need to follow. There's things we're allowed to do and things we aren't allowed to do, and especially virtually. And so there was a bit of a kind of a path to walk that we had to help coach them through how to get there and how to be comfortable doing a virtual conference. And I think that when you think about, again, teachers, they really are one of the most deserving populations to get some support for this virtual care. And so we really just didn't want to drop the ball for them. So it was a super exciting opportunity for us to get there. They had some goals that were, I think, probably very generic to the rest of us. That was primarily to increase their regional, national, and global attendance. They really needed to get a large sponsor in place. They hadn't done that in the past. And they wanted to maintain their quality of programming while keeping, again, that feel of their live conferences, which was always their kind of positive feedback from attendees after. So that kind of having to reach that global attendee was a very tricky thing for them. Interestingly enough, they gave us 62 days notice for the conference to begin, and they were trying to bump their numbers from about 400 to, at the time, they wanted to get to 1,000. And so we knew we had a big bite we had to kind of take out of this world. So we just kind of worked very closely with the leadership organizations. They had used Grenadine before for their live conferences for registration, as well as their opportunities to attend the classes, checking into their classes and that kind of thing in live. So it just made logical sense to continue on with Henry and his organization because it's so well organized. And it made it very simple for us to transition that part for the attendees. It was not something new for most of them. So we really kind of pulled off some amazing things. It was very much a group effort. The people that worked for the SEEK team, that's their acronym for their teachers sessions, and Space Center Houston, to get the marketing out there was really key. So it really was a big partnership of efforts. I know I'm here today, but they all really did most of the back work.
Okay, thank you. Marie-France?
Yeah, I feel like saying necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And so when the pandemic hit, actually most of the events of that season in 2020 were delayed and pushed. We didn't have to do a big turnaround. We did one actually, but it ended up being our pilot project with Grenadine that summer in July 2020. Luckily for me and my team, the other ones pushed to the next year so we could gain a lot more experience and be able to pull that off, which is why this year is so busy. But no, Grenadine has been an essential partner for that. And we, like I said, we had these tools in place. I think lots of communities, lots of participants, and I'll talk to the academic community in this case, we're very hesitant. I mean, hybrid or virtual existed. We had all these tools before, but there was a lot of resistance. And what we've seen is basically what maybe people are qualifying as like 10 years of change management got condensed to a very short amount of time because of the necessity to meet. In an academics world, for example, in order to advance the research, in order to they have to have these meetings, they have to connect. So we knew that this had to happen, and we had to find a new way of doing that. So we were fortunate enough to have this kind of technological base to be able to build from and work in partnership. And I would say that working, we all had to learn it together very, very quickly. Yeah, it's one of those things where, and now I think that change management's been condensed to years. So now people are getting used to it, and now they're seeing the benefits and the advantages. And now we're less scared about jumping into that technology. I think a lot of people will resist and think, oh, I'm not technologically savvy, I can't do this. But we sort of had to overcome that hurdle, or that change of mindset, and now we're full speed ahead. And now I really do feel like we're going to be in hybrid moving forward. People won't want to give up all the golden nuggets that they got in the virtual sphere.
Brian?
Well, for me, it's definitely been a very busy past 15 months, probably my busiest in my company's history. We've taken on so many new projects, and again, it comes down to attendee experience. So working with companies like Grenadine and their developers to get that experience, so that it's not just a webinar and the person sitting there watching it, right? We all want engagement. We want engagement with the other attendees. We want to be engaged with the speakers, and finding new and innovative ways to do that has been really fun for me and my team to do.
Well, thank you. I was just going to say that I would expect, Audrey, with NASA, they would be familiar with technology, and again with the education in the university setting as well. And I know that you've all used other tech as well as Grenadine, and you give an idea of what went well for you at your various events, and what were the highlights, and what would you like to keep going forward? Because I know things are going to change in the future. Some will be the same and some will be different. And what are you expecting there? What went well, basically? So
it's always a good question.
The same. Okay, Audrey, do you want to go first?
Yeah, that's always a good question, kind of what worked, because then the following question shall always be what didn't. But I think when we look at technology, there's, everything right now is trial. I think from all of us, from an event coordination side, it was a little scary. We'd all kind of depended on it lightly, as Marie-France had said. And I think that it was that total immersion that was necessary. And for us, we implemented Zoom for our sessions, and those were seamlessly merged with the Grenadine app and the website access. And so for us, it was super great to have, a program that we could preload. We had 130, 150 sessions. We had about 10 live tours that were offsite at NASA centers. We had keynote speakers, we had panels, we had lunches with astronauts, all virtual. We had lounge rooms that were great, because again, we talk about that collaborative piece. And I even think Marie-France mentioned again that having to get to talk to people is so important. So we built lounge rooms that were 24/7. When you do a global conference, you realize the difficulties that you have with the technology. So we had to find something that was very user-friendly and very widespread. So the Zoom interface worked for us very well. And of course the Grenadine app again was so perfectly designed that everything went seamlessly. And Henry was even able to kind of sit in sessions and ping me when there was something going wrong, and we could fix it immediately. It was that simple. And I had not used Grenadine before. So for me, it felt a little like we've said already, a little scary of the technology. But I think that the things that went well were really just how much support is out there from every organization to make sure every event is successful, regardless of the technology pieces they used. Another little piece that's worth mentioning is we used something called Monday.com, and it's an organizational chart. So everyone who needed to be trained on the technology had assignments to do. It was just perfect. So we were really pleased with how everything kind of followed through.
Okay, thank you. Marie-France?
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry, I jumped right in. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think what happened in the very beginning is people assume straight away. They went straight to what platform do I need to use and which one's going to fit all my needs. And I think that's a fallacy. Not one platform can meet all your needs. It's the same idea as when we were in person. You have to take every program element and you have to adapt the delivery method for that program element, whether it's a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar, or maybe it's a networking room like Remo or Wonder, or you guys might, I'm throwing out some names that maybe you've heard of, like GatherTown. And what's nice and what worked well for us, and we were so fortunate to have Grenadine on board, is that we could actually, Grenadine is like our virtual conference center, but we could have as many rooms as we want, rooms being different kinds of platforms and different delivery methods that really corresponded to the best way to host that particular activity, whether it was a collaborative activity, whether it was more passive and was more of a presentation listening activity, whether it was interactive and it was important to have these roundtables. We were able to use all kinds of tools that I just mentioned now. Those were the primary ones we use, and we continue to use. But knowing that, I think what we need to also keep in mind is technology is a moving target. Even in this last year, I'm sure all of you have noticed that applications that we've started using, new things have been popping up nonstop, and we want to be able to take that in. It's so fun to work with these new innovative tools. And what's nice though is that then we can group it all together and have it live in one virtual space, what I call my virtual event space, which is in this case Grenadine, and then have it be all part of the program in a seamless way from the user participant point of view, which for us worked really well because we could adapt what tools we used with our audience needs and or the program needs. So that's what really worked well for us.
Okay, thank you. Brian, you have some comments there? Or
Sure.
yeah.
Yep. I definitely work with, like Henry said, a number of different platforms based on the client needs. For us, a big challenge was our event with 13,000 attendees. Many of the platforms, when you tell them that size of event, they don't even want to look at it. It has its own challenges, servers and everything else become a huge challenge once you hit that 10,000 plus mark. Grenadine we worked together with the programmers and stuff, building the platform, adding new components to it. And that's so important as we go forward, even into the blended event, having that engagement part where an attendee in the seat can engage with the attendee online. And these are the things that we're looking at as we look at platforms and how we can develop that part of it so that the person online doesn't feel like a second party to the event.
Thank you. One of the things that I know from previous discussion with all three of you is you've mentioned about the increased accessibility to the event being virtual. People coming in from around the world who wouldn't normally attend. Sometimes we've had more people at events than we've had in previous years. And the question is how to maintain that in the future. And also for the social aspects that people were missing from physical events, when we go, whether you call it hybrid, multimodal, or blended type of event, it's how to have that social aspect and encourage people from both virtual and the physical realm without making any one group a second-class citizen within your event. So if anyone would like to make some comments on that?
Sure, I can.
Sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, one of our events that we did, which was this was the 19th year doing it, they had to go virtual, and they found 60% of their attendees had never attended their event before. Because it was virtual, they could come. So we had attendees and we had speakers from around the world for it. And it's this kind of thing that is going to keep moving forward through our blended or hybrid or whatever you want to call it. And it's so nice to see that part of it. And so that's a real win with what has happened over the COVID part here, is that we now events see this advantage to it. And it's going to come down to, like, that was a free event. They didn't have big sponsors or anything, but it's going to, sponsors are going to see it for some of these global events.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth noting. We should rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, I'll go quick.
Yeah.
I think it's worth noting that, statistically, when we first started doing the research on COVID and the attendee counts, we were seeing about 60% of attendees returning to the COVID kind of first in the beginning, the conferencing, just for doing it. They didn't have the time or the effort. And for teachers, they work all day long. And so, as many people do. And so for us, it was a benefit to be able to offer it on demand. And with that integration for Grenadine, I had a team of about 6 people that would quickly download every finished session, edit, and throw it back up into Grenadine as an on-demand. And so our global population could log in at 2 a.m. our time and watch the recorded session and feel like it was live. So we did end up with about 140% increase in attendance for them based on that we could serve those folks. Teachers pay for all their conference attendance, so to not have to fly somewhere and pay for hotel and pay for their meals, we just really saw that was beneficial for them.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, this idea of what an event is, and the lines are starting to get a lot blurry about the sort of boundaries that we've created in terms of space and time. In a virtual context, this doesn't exist anymore. And there's something really impactful with that, and we might start to rethink how we do events altogether. I can give an example. I think this idea of having these 2 parallel events, like one in person and one virtual, happening at the same time, is not totally what's going to happen. I think it'll happen for some events. I'll give you an example with open house. For a university, for example, that could be pretty impactful, and it's not super important that they connect together too much. But for other events, I think it's this idea of hybrid is going to be more nuanced, and we're going to cherry pick different pieces depending, coming back to the root of what is the change behavior we're trying to achieve with this event. What is the essence of what we're trying to do? If the essence is communicating together, then you will build structures with mixed realities, augmented reality, all these new things that we haven't even imagined yet, I'm sure, to blend that together. If this idea of ongoing learning and having it more at the fingertips of people on demand, in and outside of the boundaries of a traditional event format, then that'll change. And I think events are going to transform. So it's going to be a very different look at what events are, because we're not confined. We are no longer the host of an event. It's every individual is the host of the event, as opposed to the event being the host of the participant, if you hear what I mean.
Okay. So that brings me to the question I had, was basically, I think everyone's kind of expecting to still be doing something online in the following years as well. And in terms of what do you expect you need more in terms of staff and video production, moderation, and so forth, you ensuring engagement, which we just kind of talked about, and the social aspects as well, building a community, which presumably also involves doing things before and after the event. So it takes the boundary of the event outside of the core 2, 3, 4 days, whatever the event's lasting for, right? So you have comments on that? Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
I
feel ready to talk about it now. Because we're having these conversations right now. The skill sets that we're looking at for event planners, or even our departmental needs, is totally different. We're looking at having people who are more specialized in the virtual kind of event planning versus the on-site. We know that in a virtual context, more reliance on communication skills is much heavier rather than just logistics. So I think the skill sets in our workforce, as we know that the workforce is going to be transformed after this pandemic, but the same is true for events. And so the skill sets and the job profiles that we're going to be looking at are totally going to change. And to your point about production, I think a production team, which is kind of a combination of IT, communications, and event planning, is that little cross-section of those 3 elements is going to be crucial to the future, to be able to bridge the in-person and virtual, and also just enhance the virtual to a more professional level, for sure.
Brian or Audrey? Right.
Go ahead.
Sure,
I can go ahead. Go ahead.
Audra's the one that keeps interrupting. I think that the staffing does change because you're looking for a little bit, like Marie Francis had said, a different skill set that can handle the IT of it and have that knowledge of the different platforms. And from our perspective, my team didn't need to grow, but we did need our companies and our clients' teams to grow, because we don't run the entire conference. We just help organize and get it running, and then we participate in maintaining it and the schedule that it should be. So I think that there's that consideration that if you're going to hybrid it, you have to evaluate if you're going to have people live in a classroom moderating as well as online moderating, if you're going to be running those simultaneously from the same space, or will you be running two separate conferences? It's kind of a big picture that companies they really need to start evaluating what they're going to do. We've heard from our past clients that they do want to go to hybrid next year, and that they will never let the virtual arena go because of the number of people they were able to serve. So that looks different if, as we talk about the new technologies and the new things out there. So I'm hoping to see, a great gleam of light for these folks to be able to do a very smooth transition to a hybrid, as we've done for the COVID switch.
Okay. Brian?
And for me, we probably, like my other panelists, we had to train some of our clients and their volunteers on how to work virtually. So if it was a volunteer who was moderating a session, how to now engage with the attendees, make sure they're watching the Q&As, watching the chats, and relating that messages back to the speaker. So it was definitely a learning experience, both for us as a team and also our committees that we work with for some of our events.
Thank you. So I know we've kind of covered this in some of the previous conversation, but what are you looking forward to in your future events? What do you find exciting and that will be coming up in the future, say next year, post-COVID? And okay, we'll go. I'll take the order so we don't miss the signals here. So you want to start, Marie-France?
Yeah, sure. I'm really excited right now about mixed reality and augmented reality, and how that's going to play with things, where there'll be QR codes in the in-person event activities, and people will flip it and it's going to create these augmented reality features on through their phone, or fast facts when you're walking through a campus, which then will be also translated in the virtual world. I'm also looking forward to this idea of, I really like the title of the session being Back to the Future, because a lot of people are talking about let's go back to normal, go back. And I find that such an interesting idea that people are really clawing to, when in my mind, it's about moving forward and to something completely new. I don't think we're going back. But you see a divide in people who are struggling.
Okay, Audrey?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that Back to the Future is probably not where we'll go, at least with the event planning industry. I think that's just too tricky to go back there. We just weren't serving enough people the right ways. And now, with it becoming so much easier to go global, the things that I look forward to, again, is to continue to serve teachers in all of the countries that we reach this year, plus more, and all the different opportunities that are out there for people to just be able to do it from the comfort of their home or their office, their workplace. So I don't see it going back either, and I find that super exciting. The idea of AI kind of helping me, track my cameras would be great, though. So anybody out there that wants to work with us on that, let me know.
Hey, Brian?
For me, I'm really interested in see where the gamification part of the events go. When we have two different audiences, how do we make them come together in the games and in the communities, right? So, and Henry and I are already talking about our next big event, is how we're going to build those communities in the platform prior to the event, like a month before, so we can start getting those in-person people engaging with the people that might be online, and get that part working way before the event even happens.
You have some of the interesting challenges there to deal with in terms of some of the workshops, or I don't know if it's workshops or classes that people take, require materials. So it's getting materials out to people beforehand, and if it's going to be multimodal type of experience.
Yeah, we had, for that one, again, it's a teacher's event, so we had people doing hands-on art things with watching it virtual. Again, it comes down. We now have Zoom did it, right? You can watch a cooking class and everything else. So people are already getting used to it. And then other things that they're used to watching cooking shows and things like that. So I think that that's just going to become a natural part of going forward, right? It's that engagement part.
Mhm. And I know with at Concordia, some of the events they're used, as you mentioned, GatherTown and Wonder for social events, and for the Space Center event, you said you had a lounge. This was basically a large Zoom lounge, or with breakout rooms, or without, or yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. We had a lot of opportunities, yeah, for them to kind of come together. And so, again, it was about 12 different lounges that we set up that were open 24/7 with different themes and different purposes for collaboration. And so they were titled to have small group breakout sessions. They were all monitored and often led. We'd pop in famous folks, from NASA to kind of pop in and be there with them at times. But after the first, couple of those sessions, people started to realize, hey, I want to get into those rooms. And that was great because we started to have more one-on-one conversations or small group conversations amongst people, because a lot of times that's why you go to a conference, is for your networking. And that was a tricky thing to find. We still hosted our live banquet, and we had, like I said, DJ rooms, and we had mixology rooms so people could go in. And we sent out lists ahead of time in emails that said if there were materials needed, gather these ahead of time. And that kind of helped, especially on the night when they had their banquet and they had a bar mixer. So it worked out very well.
Yes, I just popped over to have a look at the chat and noticed that somebody said that they loved attending events from their sofa.
Yeah.
With
your sweatpants on.
So, yes. Sorry, Marie-France, you had some comments there to say as well?
Oh, I was just saying, I think everyone enjoys being able to. On the social side, yeah, it's super important. Something I noticed, though, a lot of people or a lot of clients come to me and they're very trepidatious because they think, oh, people are zoomed out, we don't want to do this. And I do see is that people, these networking opportunities or these times, like, they miss each other. People want to be together. And the most important thing is to create a sense of togetherness. So really, it's not about the technology at all. If you're doing it well, you aren't even thinking about that. So I think the key is really trying to make it as seamless as possible so people can just get into the interaction straight away, because that's what they're craving. And again, the right motivation is there. They don't care about being zoomed out or what have you, as long as we can get a face in front of them and they can have those meaningful engagements with people.
Yeah, and we really don't have to teach people. People are already using Facebook and things like that to engage with their family and friends, right? So they're already used to doing it online. It's just how do platforms build that into it so that it feels like a Facebook and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, seamless. Absolutely.
Wouldn't you want to do more than just the Facebook in terms of you Facebook or having a Discord or some other thing which is textual? Seeing people face to face, you get that interaction as well, which is also useful. And I know, Brian, in some of your events you have like one-on-one or group meetings where people basically sit around virtual tables as well, and that works well.
It is, yeah. Again, back to Facebook Messenger, right? We can all sit in a group and have a video chat in Facebook Messenger, right? And it's really important that our platforms work that way, so that, because our attendees are going to want it, right? They're going to want to engage, and that was the one thing that came clear before when COVID happened, is that we have to have that engagement. We can't just have webinars, right? Because people go away and say, well, yeah, it was a great event or a great session, but the event wasn't there, right? So with those engagement components, and yeah, you want the one-on-one, you want the text chat and all those other elements.
Yeah. Another really interesting thing that I think has come out of this, both in virtual and for future hybrid, is that, there's different learning styles. And so one of the things that came out in some of my design sessions with different people when we were looking at how to transform these events are these wonderful advantages that some people do learn better through chat and being able to take notes like more concretely. People have a better time engaging or making more meaningful interactions if they are in a chat that complements the video, and then complements the presentation, that then complements the, you know, mural or whatever, that interactive map that they can capture all these wonderful ideas. And those are little things that we hadn't really exploited or done as much of in person. So now we have like all these different mediums and technologies that can complement it. Again, I'm not about the technology, I'm more about just the means to get there. And I think that really serves well for all kinds of learning types, which we know is very different. Different people absorb information differently. So I think, you know, I'm biased, but from the academic point of view and the teacher point of view, I think there's a really wonderful complement that happens there, you know.
We did an event with 50 poster sessions, and we had each one of the poster presenters do a video talking about their poster, right? So there was something there for people to absorb, not just an image of a poster.
Yes.
And ability to speak to your presentation, I think, too. And, you know, you mentioned earlier the need to train your volunteers and everything like that. I think even as much as we do assume that everyone's done, you know, interactive video conferencing, oftentimes they haven't done it well. So it takes time to, you know, train your presenters as well to really understand how you're not just talking to a screen. And from our perspective, it was really critical that on-demand content was as, you know, with the fidelity of the live as it could be. So the idea of chats was kept open. Again, with Grenadine, they could watch the on-demand and still continue to monitor chats after their event and their session. And I thought that was really powerful because it kept the community talking. And they continued talking for weeks and weeks. And that was the best part of it, is making sure that they're following through with all the work that people did to train them with new technologies and new pieces of information.
Yeah, you mentioned before about training people, and I think it was both from the event organizers that you're working with, the attendees and the speakers, and they all have different skills they had to be trained with, right?
Actually, everyone's kind of nodding here right now.
Yeah.
Definitely the bulk. Yeah. I think it's over 50% of the time spent is getting people comfortable, teaching them the new skills. I think that's the next challenge in the next year. I'm trying to find different ways that we can maybe do some mass training, because it's luckily we're really good at our jobs. We know how to get the event done, but we are spending a lot of time just getting people onboarded really and getting really comfortable so that they can experience the benefits.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, go on, Audrey. Yes, Audrey.
Oh, no, I was saying go ahead. I just agree 100%. It's just something we don't take into account, the hours that are spent to make sure that the presenters get the knowledge out that they already have. And that's an expense for a corporation to pay for that training time that we assume people have. And like you said, Marie Frances, it'll be nice in about a year when all of our famous speakers and all of our needs are met, because they've done it a few times.
Yeah,
but the technology is probably going to change again, right? So how you are in front of the audience will be the same, but some of the tech you use is probably going to change, right?
We need good partners to keep us on track.
Yes, I'm seeing that like recently there are conferences at Concordia that are using poster sessions and so forth, and some of the poster sessions are live in terms of you have a session at a specific time, and some are like video on demand. People can go to the poster at any time, view the poster, and you have various assets and so forth. And how is that working out for you in terms of how it's different from the real world experience of a session, poster session and so forth?
Well, Brian touched on it. I think it's actually enriching the experience much more, right? You can't be everywhere at once, but because in virtual and / hybrid, there's elements of the event can be asynchronous and live and semi-live, and all these things are kind of happening all at once, right? And again, to what Brian was saying, people are used to this kind of social network and social marketing where we're on Twitter and we're in a meeting and we're doing that, I don't know if it's healthy, I'm not trying to promote this, but it kind of gives this sort of it does mirror what we've been doing, and it does enrich the experience, because again, people learn in different ways. So if you have a video, and then you have a poster, and then you have chat, and then you have comments, those are like 4 different ways that we can interact with a poster, which is far more than somebody standing next to the poster and hoping you run into each other and have that conversation. So there's so many more touch points. That's really cool to see.
Yes. One of the things that I think... Sorry, Brian, go on.
And being able to provide I come look at your poster, but I don't have time to talk to you because I want to see the other posters. But I can leave a lead generation of some type for you, and so you can come back and we connect after the event, right? So which the virtual space allows us to do. It's a lot harder in the in-person, but on a virtual space, yeah, I can leave my contact information, and that poster presenter can reach out to me.
Yeah. And I saw somebody in the chat mentioned a comment about accreditation, so which also means keeping track of who went to various sessions. I suppose on an online venue that is makes it a wee bit easier to keep track of, and you get an idea. I know with Brian, you got some statistics in terms of the number of people who attended sessions, the number of people who participated in chats, and how many chats there were per session, and so forth as well.
The analytics side of the digital is fantastic, right? We can analyze everything. I've been in marketing for many years in digital marketing. Everything can be tracked, right?
Yeah. Well, I know some associations.
Think about the exhibitors.
Yes. Well, that's another aspect, which I think you'll probably have more experience than I do, Marie-France, there.
Yeah, well, there's so many more analytics as well. Like, you know, exhibitors, I think a lot of planners know that exhibitors are always there to complain. They're never satisfied, right? That's kind of the byline. But with analytics, we have more concrete information. We have more data to show, like, well, no, actually, you know, lots of people came to your booth and et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Henry.
No, it's fine.
No, I think it's worth noting teachers have to show to get recertified in the US. I'm not sure in Canada, but they have to show certain numbers of, you know, credited hours. And for us to do the virtual, that was actually one of our tough suits, was to identify that they came to the class, they participated in the class, and then they stayed the entire period. And that they did earn, you know, their blanket 40 credit hours. And that was a little bit of a twist to figure out. But the niceness is, as Brian had said, is that we can track this. We can argue actually with a teacher who says, I was there every day, all day. Well, not really. So, you know, and for those that were, here's your certificate. So it was important for us to be able to identify that. And then we struggled with, after the fact of the viewing of on-demand content, to making sure that we could still give out those certificates to teachers that had to do it after hours, or wanted to see a session that was running concurrently. We had 10 classrooms running, and so they still had to pick their favorite session. They were sure to get in, but not necessarily see all the ones they wanted, and so they could still continue to earn those credit hours after, which I think was really valid, and again, it was due to the digital opportunities.
Oh, thank you everybody for sharing your experience for the past year and your visions for the future. James has just popped in, so that's our sign that we're finishing, right?
Yeah, just about out of time, and yeah, pretty much bang on time. Henry, thank you very much for running such an informative session. And can I just say, it's been great to hear some of these first-hand experiences. As you would expect at Event Tech Live, we've got a lot of companies and a lot of tech providers and people who are really knowledgeable about the tech talking over these 3 days of the event. But it's great to hear these first-hand experiences of things that you had to deal with, considerations with your own customers, with your own clients. And I'd love it if anybody who's tuned into this session wants to extend the conversation further with the panelists today. Please do so via the Event Tech Live platform. You can find all of our panelists and speakers in there. Send them a connection. And guys, if you do receive those sort of connections and requests from people, all you've got to do is just click a button on your own profile within Event Tech Live, and hopefully we can extend some of these conversations, because judging by some of the comments and the feedback that I've been watching as the session has been going on, there's a lot of people who would want to hear some of these experiences in a little bit more detail. So thank you to all four of you. Thank you to Henry for putting that session together. Henry, Audra, Brian and Marie-France, it's been great to have you at Event Tech Live, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.